This subject with real human implications. I'm going to talk you through the movie, well, parts of the movie Hackers, which is a 1990s movie that some people here have seen, and it's totally ridiculous in parts, but other parts are surprisingly realistic. I say surprisingly, given the fashion, anything in there being realistic. But just to start off, here's I think the main reason that we get some of the really bizarre things that we get in Hackers is likely because this quote is true, and to most of Hollywood, computers are sufficiently advanced. So are telephones. Magic. Probably to most of the bench too. Yeah. And okay. So it's trying to think where to go. Okay, so I might like to start by going to one of the realistic clips. So we'll go to one near the start that's nice and realistic. So at 4 minutes and 37 seconds ish, we'll start playing. Yeah, that'll do.
Can you hit the lights?
That is very 90s.
Yes, it is such a 90s film.
The Matrix calls it wants its coat back.
It's more 90s than The Matrix.
Happy birthday.
Security, Norman speaking. Norman? This is Mr. Eddie Vedder from accounting. I just had a power surge here at home that wiped out a file I was working on. Listen, I'm in big trouble. You know anything about computers? Gee. Right, well, my BLT drive on my computer just went AWOL, and I got this big project due tomorrow from Mr. Kawasaki, and if I don't get it in, he's gonna ask me to commit harry-carry. Yeah, well, you know these Japanese management techniques. Could you, read me the number on the modem? It's a little boxy thing, Norm, with switches on it. Lets my computer talk to the one there. 212-555-4240.
Okay, if you could stop now. So, that, sorry for the bright lights. They'll be flicking on and off, so prepare yourselves. Okay. That is a fairly classic social engineering technique, calling up pretending to be someone that needs a seemingly innocuous piece of information that someone who doesn't know what that information is can give to you, as you can see with the BLT drive. That's one of the most realistic things in this entire movie. But you're about to go directly to a highly unrealistic thing, which is what he does with that is about just in 20 seconds time, so you might even just want to play through.
So-called American Indians, Latinos, and blacks come from a genetically mediocre stock.
Yak, yak, yak.
Being aware of racial division.
Get a job.
And I am.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just didn't hear.
Sorry, yeah. And that's where it gets unrealistic. So you would be able to hack into a system using, if you had the modem and then you had some credentials, realistic enough. What systems do not have is nice, helpful graphics that show you exactly what the piece of hardware you're then controlling is doing. And if you go to the PowerPoint, then to the second or third slide, there are only 3 slides. It's a very hastily put together talk. Next one. So these things here are what you're It's hard to see.
Lights off probably. helps.
Yeah, lights off. So if you're actually remote accessing a computer, whether it's in the 1980s on the right there, or in 2014, earlier today, then you're probably facing some white or green text on a black screen, and you're just typing away, hoping that you can find the right command to get the computer to tell you what files are there. So that's just me accessing my university files from off campus. And the other one is from something Grisha will tell you about later, on a later date.
Maybe.
Oh, but what you'll notice is it's not a fancy GUI showing you where they keep the files in the computer, partly because there's no need for it to be, and partly because files on a computer aren't actually stored in nice files in real life. They're little bits of electricity and magnetism stored in various formats and hardware.
Incidentally, a GUI is a graphic user interface.
Oh yeah,
Anything
sorry.
shiny and pretty is a GUI.
Yes, a GUI is a graphical user interface. You cannot use it to track someone down unless there's something behind the GUI that can track people down, despite what CSI, I think it was, wants you to believe.
Another big reason why remote accessing doesn't give you a GUI is that when you're remote accessing, everything that's coming up on your screen is getting pulled over the internet from your computer. So if you're trying to pull graphics from that, unless you've got the software that's rendering the graphics on your computer, you're pulling a lot of extraneous junk.
Yeah,
And that's not worth it.
yeah. And to give you a sort of context for the mid-90s and for the technology talk that we won't watch because it's a little bit boring, they're using modems that give you about half the speed of the 56K stuff of the dial-up that you probably remember, that the older of you probably remember using. They would really not be able to do even 144p YouTube videos. Would be like watching a slideshow, like watching a GIF.
Like watching a DLD recording?
Oh, I always get those nice and quickly downloaded.
But it's a 1 slide per second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One frame per
Anyway,
second.
moving on.
Yeah.
Actually,
Lights can probably go
Yeah,
back
it
on.
is.
Yes, lights probably go back on, like look at where we are in the movie. So the social engineering thing is also the one you want to watch out for. Don't hand out information to people you aren't absolutely sure are who they're saying they are.
Come
They
on,
are.
I'm pretty sure that Nigerian prince has just held up is all. I'm sure the money's coming.
Yes,
Someday now.
yes,
Someday.
I'm sure as soon as he recovers from Ebola, he'll be there. Yes.
Burn! Oh.
wait, since you're the last really living relatively dies of Ebola, doesn't that mean more's coming?
Oh, well, unless the conveyancer also dies of Ebola.
So basically,
Yeah, so-
we need everyone to not die of Ebola, or I won't
Yeah.
get my money.
People's lives, and also it's important.
Yes, that's pretty much it. What we need is for there not to be a catastrophic plague of Ebola across the entire world.
That would be nice.
That would be really nice, just in general as well as for you to get your Nigerian prince money. Yeah, but it's that sort of phone call is the most common way that people will gain access to your bank account details, your telephone your telephone ID, and your email accounts, your Facebook. Well, actually, no, your Facebook is probably because you left something unlocked in this room. But your important work emails and that sort of thing. And I'm sorry that I'm not very prepared. I submitted an assignment quite shortly before this.
It's all fine, it's all fine.
And
Where are we?
Shouldn't have admitted that.
You made an Ebola joke about, like, you can't top that.
great. Yes, well, I could have made worse jokes, but no.
I'm not sure you could have. This is the Ebola virus we're talking about.
What was the topic of your talk? I'm fairly sure there are opportunities for worse. I'm not going to go into them.
Oh,
Hackers.
anyway. Hackers.
Okay. Well, since we're talking about vaguely realistic things, if we go on to the next page, the next slide, this one we can read with the lights on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a fairly current list of the most common passwords. There's one reason on the list which is just no password. That's quite possibly still the most common, although more and more sites and systems are requiring you to have at least the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or password in the box now, so it's becoming less common. If any of you were paying attention to the Gary McKinnon thing, the way he gained access to several hundred US government, including defense computers, fairly shortly after the 9/11 attacks, when he was looking for his UFO data, was by checking to see which logins had no password attached, and he found hundreds in the US government, people with training when they were on a high security alert because the 9/11 attacks had just happened. They then freaked out and a load of systems got shut down. Luckily for them and everyone really, it turned out it was just
Crazy.
it was just a guy with a UFO obsession in the UK trying to find out more about Roswell. Yeah. And
Why monkey?
but there's a nice clip, but this isn't a new thing. Hello. And there's a nice clip at starting at about 23:35. Okay.
Close enough.
Well, we're giving the older
Where are your
list.
brains? In your ass? Don't you know anything?
Stupid, man. It's universally stupid.
You guys always seem like you know everything. You never tell me anything. All right. All right. What are the 3 most common used passwords?
Love, secret, and sex.
But not in that order necessarily, right?
Yeah, but don't forget God. System operators love to use God. It's that whole male ego.
Look, you want to be elite? You got to do a righteous act.
Okay, that's.
None of this accidental shit.
Unfortunately, I can't find the file stamp, but there is. I can't find the timestamp in my notes here right now for the point where they actually hack in and find that the admin's password is in fact God for this movie. But it triggered. If you haven't seen this movie, there's a bunch of kids who consider themselves to be doing harmless hacking into people's bank accounts and cancelling their credit cards, occasionally changing around traffic lights, setting off the school fire alarms. You know, just harmless stuff that might cause a multi-car accident but get them to a train station more quickly when they're on roller skates.
So they hack traffic lights while they're on roller skates?
No, they set something that will hack the traffic lights, and then they go on their roller skates and leave their computer to run the program what's there. The traffic lights bit is at 1:18:38, and for everyone who likes to feel comfortable and safe on the road, this is something that can be done with a lot of modern traffic lights for real because they're wired into systems that can be hacked and have been.
Repeatedly.
Yeah.
You, narc. That's it. An electronic army. If I were us, I'd get on the internet, send out a major distress signal.
Hackers of the world unite.
How are you going to take care of the cops?
This is basically the 90s idea of what Anonymous was going to be like. And this is the timed program that will affect the traffic lights.
Yo, I'm blowing up. It's Kate, Grand Central. Let's hit it.
Very 90s pagers. Very New York, old men playing chess in the park. And there you go, your rollerblades.
And then the blonde one became Sherlock Holmes.
Light.
Seriously?
That's the scene we wrote from
That's from
Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry, I keep on clicking those off and on. So, the reason that they've decided it's a good idea to hack all those traffic lights is because someone is trying to frame them for attempting to sink some oil tankers and also to steal a few $1 million. So they've decided that makes it totally morally and ethically acceptable to change a load of traffic lights at random, causing multiple car accidents, because apparently manslaughter is not quite as bad in the US as the theft of $25 million. In 1995 money though.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So that'd be like,
That's a lot of money.
Upwards of $40 million a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can buy at least 2 new bodies with that, right?
They'll pay the waggle when the 4 people killed in that traffic accident.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if they choose to pay them camels.
Maximize your camels.
Yeah. So, as you might guess from this and also from the things about bank accounts, this is portraying things as essentially childish hijinks, which are dangerous and serious crimes with real victims. But because these are the good guys, which you can tell because all the good guys in this film wear rollerblades and the bad guys use skateboards, then it's all okay. Multiple vehicle accidents are no big problem. Stealing money from the bank accounts of government employees, also not a problem. Whereas this guy scraping about a fraction of a cent off thousands of financial transactions every day over several years, accumulating $25 million to steal without is totally heinous, to use the phrasing of the movie. Yeah, it doesn't
Wait, so that's
really
the
work.
Office Space thing.
Yeah, yes,
Is that
and
right?
it's also a real thing. The real life people that most successfully set up an attack of this kind that scraped the fractions of a cent off financial transactions did get several million francs, I think it was at the time, or it might have been shortly after the euro conversion. Apparently changed most of it into gold and buried it somewhere in a forest in France before they were caught and arrested. So I gather that some of it they may be able to access when they get free, but so long as they can hide it from the police. And hide from the police that they have millions of dollars of gold rather than are in poverty after spending 20 years in prison. So the worm is based on the worm at the center of this is based on a real thing. These social engineering techniques are real, but if we go to 24 and 2438, we're going to see what's different about the computers, about supercomputers in this, and how you hack them in this world.
From Star Wars.
I said about Matrix and Matrix. Oh god, and there's your password god.
I didn't realise this was part of the Tron series.
Yeah, it's an interplay.
What, Tron and the Matrix crossover?
It's meant to be.
This is supposed to be what a computer looks like. This is actually supposed to be what it physically looks like, as well as in terms of file system. As you'll be able to see if we go to a scene later in the film where it's being attacked.
It just looks like downtown Tokyo.
I especially like how his
Yes.
monitor cuts off half the text.
Oh yeah, it's really useful.
Pick
Yes.
one.
So
This is so productive. It's
warning
awesome.
lights. Yeah, so that's not what computers look like. That's not even we don't even have it's basically they looked at Jurassic Park and thought, how can we make that Unix GUI look more sci-fi by adding transparency, adding lights, and
things going really fast that make the pew pew sound.
yeah.
Always the pew pew sound.
And this has become a sort of theme. So you'll see it in the movie War Games: The Dead Code, which is not the one you're talking about, which is a sort of sequel, where they decided that they have a computer where the main way you can tell it's powerful, aside from it being the size of a room and it not being the 50s, is that it has LEDs everywhere. It's like the sort of computer that you'd expect a LOL player to have, except the size of a room.
Whereas normally it's
Exactly the kind of thing I'd
size of a
expect a
room.
role player to have.
Yeah. Well, yes, Grisha, given the average age of serious LOL players is probably around 15.
I've got to ask,
Yeah.
will you be showing at any point the scene from NCIS, the famous hacking
If
scene?
we would like to go to the double hacking scene, then
But we'll
we can do
wait
it.
till the end, of course.
We'll do that after.
Or we can do that later. I'm just trying to work out where the. So I think it would be good to go to the scene where we see that is actually what they have in front of them in the room as the computer that they are using, and the weird double keyboard that they have, which will remind you of the NCIS scene but with more sci-fi. But I'm just trying to work out, do I have the timestamp of it here? That's the thing. So okay, it would be.
Just hack in and get this timestamp.
Yeah, hang on, it's here. About 1 minute, or 1 hour 22 minutes.
Well, I can get you a paperclip and a wristwatch, and between that you should be able to hack into your computer at home, shouldn't you?
Okay.
Oh yeah, sure. So far so normal. These are
This is actually achievable.
yes, this is achievable.
Screensaver.
People have done that.
This is not.
Wait, what? Sorry, just Fiona, you were saying? People have done that
People
sort of...
have done those sorts of viruses. They were a lot of fun. They were a common one for kids to make, especially once the basic codes for some of them got shared around, so people could just stick in their own graphics. So if you let that play, then we'll see that yes, he is walking in that computer as you saw, and that is the double keyboard. And now they're going to get it hacked. So let's see.
It looks like lots of fun.
Replicating eating up memory.
Cookie Monster was a real thing,
I'll head him off to the past.
which did approximately that. You had to type in cookie.
Techno Legend and Holy Files. Run antivirus. Give me a systems display.
That's so bad. And that's the keyboard.
This is fun.
Rabbit is in the administration system. Send a flu shot.
Rabbit, flu shot, someone talk to me.
A rabbit replicates till it overloads a file that it spreads like cancer.
What? I thought David Bowie was creeping normal.
So that's the bit with the oil
The
tankers.
Gibson is finding us
Don't
too
worry, they
fast.
don't collapse because the good guys win. Because they hack more even though it's
They have to.
Hey!
Oh yeah, he's flying around the supercomputer.
Yes, he's flying around the supercomputer, which actually looks like that in real life, and he can walk through. And
And he's wearing Google Glass.
yes, no one knows why he's wearing Google Glass. Apparently, it makes him leak.
Don't screw up.
Okay, I think that's probably.
That was.
I need to watch this now. Oh yes. Just
Well,
abuse.
Please.
I'm going to
Just
turn on the
the
lights. No.
We're all Twilight Vampires, doesn't
Okay.
matter.
So
It's why we're so fabulous.
here we have the wonderful combination of some things that are real and some things that are, well, like that computer in terms of architecture. A rabbit's a real thing. just doesn't replicate in a file. It replicates in the operating system. It replicates it. It's a process that replicates itself multiple times until eventually your computer runs out of resources to make more rabbits and or do anything else. So you have to restart the computer. Usually that'll solve it unless they've made it one that will restart itself on startup. Again, in which case you'll need to act quickly in the boot up period. Some people are creative.
That's really hard to do. You get it to get in the boot.
Yeah, yes, I know. Do you know people that could do this? Yes, you do. You
Not naming any names.
Actually, it used to
it's
be
considerably harder in Windows 8.
well, but in the system that we have in computer science, one of my friends destroyed my first user account by writing one of these in Python and then running it. So usually if you switch it off, restart it, it's fine. However, what they've done in the with the part server you don't switch off. The user account you're either logged in and using processes actively, or it's just dormant. So in that case, it was dormant with a full bank of processes. Well, it could have been worse. They're also called they're a program linked to a fork bomb.
Yeah.
So technically, the one that was used on my computer was not quite a fork bomb because it only iterated itself once every iteration. It's just none of the processes ever got killed.
Perhaps you might explain what a fork bomb is.
So a fork bomb is essentially what I explained. It's a process that spawns more processes that spawn more processes, and a fork bomb has to spawn at least 2 in every iteration to technically count as a fork bomb, although you don't need it in order to destroy someone's stuff.
But it does mean that the seconds it
explain
can
rabbit
sort
science.
To be slightly more accurate, basically when you've got a process running on a computer and you need to do essentially 2 processes at once, it's called forking. You fork the current process into 2. So then if you iterate that a lot, and you just
Iterate means repeat.
A fork bomb you need to spawn 2 child processes and then have the initial one continue. But you don't need to do that. I could write one that would work on this computer, and you'd be fine after you restarted.
Please don't.
But I won't run it. It's really easy on any Unix computer.
To give you an idea of why that sort of virus is revoltingly effective, you can write a good fork bomb in a single line of code.
Yes, that's what I was going to do.
It takes you about 30 seconds to type.
Wasn't one of those shared on the X drive at Grammar for years?
More than one.
There was always the file you could click. Somebody would always rename a file.
Yes.
The
simplest one. Or
it was usually called
there's
Taylor.
a nice one. There's a nice one that will work in any bash shell. So bash shell is one of the common, not the standard Windows command line, but it's a similar one that's used.
Has Alice in it?
And will work on all the things. Yeah, but there's a nice one which is while true, run in background. Firefox will work more quickly than most of the others because Firefox likes resources a lot. So it won't just take up the total running processes, it'll also start taking up a lot more of your CPU time than would with the simple just while true recreate this. That's why it's not a true fork bomb, because it just keeps replicating a different process. But it works a lot more quickly than a fork bomb or a standard rabbit, because it creates a much more resource-hungry thing. Yeah, so you can find out how many Firefoxes your computer can handle.
Answer's probably about 6.
In one line of Python after you've imported the system.io thing, I think it is. It's probably... You can do it on your own laptop fine. Probably don't do it on someone else's.
Unless you really don't like
Don't do it on Parch. While they do now know how to sort that out, sort of, it can still cause things. So it took them 2 weeks to give me a new user account with the files from the old user account in it. So they've now had practice. Yes, this is why you don't leave your computer unlocked and unattended, even if you're stepping 2 meters away to help doing a shared assignment.
Wow.
Because we kid you not, 30 seconds.
Well, 30 seconds is way an overestimate if people can.
If they know it by heart, they can just go.
Yeah, exactly. It would probably be. You can write them in less than 30 characters, I think. Really simple
I think
ones.
this would be a lesson of like not walking away from your computer for that like 15 seconds around people that know this kind of shit.
People leave their computers open in the CSSA.
Yeah.
Well,
Alright, this basic rule in a bar: you don't leave your drink unattended. You don't
Yeah.
leave your computer unattended. Simple
To be
process.
fair, CSSA people are kind of not.
to be fair,
Flexible.
this was a former CSSA president.
Oh, good. That's wonderful.
No, don't do it.
And he didn't know that it was how it was going to interact with Parch. Previously, Parch hadn't had that process limit. The reason that process limit was added because about a year earlier, someone had semi-accidentally fork-bombed Parch just at the start of the long weekend when there was supposed to be assignment submission during the thing, and by the time a technician got to the room to find out that they had no process limit, so it just kept going over the entirety of Parch and caused it to use maximum resources solidly for 3 days, which destroyed a lot of the hardware.
That was last year, wasn't it?
That was before your time.
Really?
Yeah, that was a couple of years
There was
before
something
you.
similar last year.
There have been a few other things where things have been destroyed, and there have also been a few fires and stuff. It's a risk of having very hot computers.
When you make your computer work hard, it gets really hot, and you can cause a computer to burst into flames by making it work too hard for too long.
Yeah. That's why even now, then, big server rooms are still refrigerated, even though it's not required for every computer to be fully liquid cooled anymore. And you can actually have that on your lap without making yourself sterile. Yay!
Hopefully.
Probably. Research still pending.
Yeah, but the radiation's low level, and anyway, the batteries are
Oh no,
really
it's the heat. It's the heat
True.
that was the problem, not the thing.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what
Can
people
I
thought.
ask quickly, what is Parch?
So Parch is the servers that the computer science department hosts the user accounts on, so that you can log on to any computer in the department and you'll get your stuff, or you can remote access it like I did in the.
It's kind of similar to Pebble, except you
Yeah.
can access it by terminal and you can run a whole lot of useful stuff on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really useful if I knew what Pebble was.
Pebble is what your
Jeez.
your user account is on this big server that the ANU has called Pebble. That's why if you log on to a Mac, it doesn't display it on Windows, but on a Mac, you log on it, you click it, it opens up Finder, and it says quite openly in the main address bar for the file, bloody bloody blah /pebble/u, whatever your number is.
Well, I don't know that.
If you can remote access your files, then
We
you'll
use
be
trying
doing
to avoid
it
logging
via.
in on a Mac.
No, like
That's
I understand the overarching, like I
Yeah,
understand the
sorry,
generalities.
sorry.
It's just the specific,
Yes,
specific
Parch-
Parch and Pebble
Yeah.
as names.
I thought that everyone knew that.
Pebble is
Sorry,
the
sorry,
Pebble is the normal one. Parch is CSIT's specific one because they don't trust ANU and they want to do their own
Well,
thing.
also
But we
because
kind of
they don't
believe
trust
it,
Well,
right?
they want to keep it isolated.
Also because the
That's
CS
because
students
ANU
tend to
doesn't
find
trust
ways
them.
to break all of the Parch stuff, and it's better when they don't also break all of the ANU stuff.
Yeah.
Given that Aaron destroyed probably quite possibly in excess of $10,000 worth of equipment with that fork bomb.
That's
You just said that in camera.
He destroyed several of the Parch server, the hardware.
Hypothetically, not that he did, which he wouldn't because.
Oh, it was
on camera.
it was hypothetically accidental. It was him, and he knows it, and It was officially not deliberate. And nowadays all student code for that course is run in a sandbox rather than on Parch.
A sandbox is a nice little playpen in
yes.
which nothing bad happens.
Yeah, a sandbox is
Well, you
there's
can't
a-
escape,
like
basically.
the way that there's a Wikipedia sandbox for those people that like vandalizing things but don't actually want to vandalize things.
No, I run one when I do my online banking.
Yeah. But because he wasn't the only one to have
It's on
an
your key
accidental
tabs.
fork bomb
Hmm.
in an assignment that year, he was just
Depends
the
how
only
it's
one
done.
to destroy.
Many things.
Yeah, because of the time at which he tried it out on his own partition of Parch. That's why we now have a 50 process limit. So if you've ever been annoyed by that, and I know there have been people who've been annoyed by not being able to have 64 separate processes running for a matrix transformation thing. Yes, you know them.
Big mathematical
Often,
thing that chews up
yeah.
a lot of power.
Yes. Essentially, you have a box with a different number in each of these squares, and for the thing they were trying to do, they were trying to swap them along the diagonal. So it's a really simple thing for a human to do, but it takes a lot of computational effort because you can't do anything other than really swap them. If you're trying to
MIEA to MJI and vice versa.
If you've got
Yeah.
a very big box
Yeah.
and you're doing lots of
Yeah,
them
okay,
at
sure,
once,
but you don't have to do it all at once, right? You just
Yeah.
systematically
Yes.
do it.
Yes, it's just
For
if
all
you're trying to
MIA.
do it really quickly by parallelizing it into 64
Oh, yeah.
separate processes,
Yeah, okay, that'll be a problem.
then you will run out of processes within 50 processes.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
no normal human will ever need
yes.
that many processes.
No
Yeah,
normal human will ever
Well,
need any.
the
That's
one
why
you-
it's a silly limit to have in CS. They should probably go for something normal, like for CS, like 256. We like powers of 2. But that's probably the best stuff from the movie, unless people would like to watch a SWAT raid on an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's at the very start.
Very start?
Yeah, the very start.
That looks like a swap raid on an 11-year-old.
Yep.
And go.
Full screen?
No full screen for you.
I don't know how to make
It's
it
the
full
one
screen.
that's
If you do-
Is it go,
Next to the
yeah,
hamburger.
the arrows, yeah.
No.
Click.
I don't use Mac.
Yeah,
Use
that's
that.
it.
You ever seen the van pull up and thought nothing of it?
I mean,
It's
even if
okay.
I
It's
seen
an
it for a while
unmarked
and looked
van.
suspicious,
No,
I
the
wouldn't have
van
expected
said
that.
free candy, so it's fine.
Sure.
And to be fair, he's kind of meant to be occupied on a computer.
Maybe he needs to
And
dance.
Mom's doing.
Upstairs. What's going on? What's the matter? Who are you? Hey!
Knock it down.
The defendant, Dave Murphy, who calls himself Zero Cool, has repeatedly committed criminal acts of a malicious nature. This defendant possesses a superior intelligence, which he uses to a destructive and antisocial end. His computer virus crashed 1,507 systems, including Wall Street trading systems, single-handedly
It's rather hard to
causing
do
a
that
7-point
now.
drop in the New York stock market.
Well, he's got
Dave
this.
Murphy, I hereby fine your family $45,000. Sentence you to probation, under which you are forbidden to own or operate a computer or touch-tone telephone until the day of your 18th birthday.
He just got grounded.
Just
Yeah.
crashed Wall Street.
You just can't commit
Very
to
sad.
open source development anymore.
Incidentally, there was for a while a phenomenon of a thing called swatting, where you basically call in a SWAT team attack on some random person.
Well,
It's still happening though.
The traditional, well, it's not
Yes,
so much
to
as
be
the
fair,
it's
probably
happened a
ended
couple
up
of
making
weeks ago.
millions for the companies.
I think swatting. I mean, there have only like been 5 or 6 events of swatting.
There was one a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. The idea being that people obviously stream games online. The idea being that they'll stream a video showing them playing like League of Legends or something, and then somebody in the audience will hop on the phone and report sort of an armed hostage situation in that household or something. So that on live stream, this poor person will be busy playing League of Legends, and sort of 5 or 6 armed police officers will burst into the door or to get on the ground.
Well,
Which I laugh about, but is also terrible.
There have also been a couple. There's been at least one occasion where the person who pulled up pretended to be the person, and also then when the SWAT team was approaching the place, started saying that he was about to come out shooting, and attempted to get the person who was playing the video game to be actually shot.
What?
That's cool. I mean, that's
Yeah.
it was taking
Well,
that's taking something uncool and making it.
Yes, that's getting the police to knock down your door and terrifying a whole load of people, and turning it into getting a load of police to knock down your door and maybe kill you.
Which does, however, bring up one of the major issues with this, because it's based on some fairly simple ideas being applied in sophisticated ways. A very young person can master the ideas and can learn how to apply them, or can just find the relevant code or idea on the internet and copy it. Control-C, Control-V is a very powerful tool, which means you've got people who have access to a lot of very cool things without necessarily the brains to know how to use them.
Yeah.
Nowadays we have much better firewalls. So to cause anything like that kind of damage, you would have to be spectacularly good and spend a long time.
My control and paste skills are gone level.
There's a real problem because so much current hacking is done using tools that have already been made, Metasploit, etc., to find your way in, and then using the fact that a lot of things are secure from the outside but not from the inside to get around and cause your major damage. It is still one of the big problems with any system that's connected to a system that's connected to the internet, that a kid who's downloaded tools doesn't yet have the morals or the understanding of consequences to know that you shouldn't mess around with a nuclear reactor, to give one example, or with the US East Coast power generation, power generators. Could potentially get a hold of the tools and the knowledge to get in there via a not perfectly secure computer that's connected to the internet, through an intranet connection. Because while we're fairly good now about keeping the really critical systems themselves offline, we're not very good at keeping an air gap.
Yeah.
Which is the only. An air gap just means that there's a space where there's no actual electronic connection between one system and another. There's no way that information can pass between the two. It's the way that you make something secure from the only way you can make something totally technologically secure, although it's still vulnerable to humans.
It's an interesting point made about how like a lot of these kids have essentially gotten hold of the software and don't really know how to use it. Like pretty much at this stage, most of Anonymous, you know what I'm talking about, right? Anonymous?
Yeah.
We are Legion. Are like 15-year-old kids who got hold of old ion cannon. You guys know what a DDoS is, right?
No.
District Denial of Service.
Dedicated. What you do is essentially you bombard a web server or something with so many requests that it can't keep up, gives up, and cries. The idea is that it makes the website inaccessible to anybody else. So that's like 99% what Anonymous does these days, is that it pulls off these DDoSs. The way that they get these DDoSs to happen is that they tell everybody else in Anonymous and anybody on their botnet who they've hacked to download this thing called Orbital Ion Cannon, which essentially spams requests at this particular server non-stop, at this particular IP to be more exact, non-stop, until it gives up and cries. It's just that a lot of Anonymous now is 15-year-olds who downloaded Orbital Ion Cannon and have no idea what they're doing, which is why one of the greatest things you can ever do on 4chan is tell anonymous people to DDoS 196.108.0.1. Now, that IP is your own, that's your home IP. That's your so what that does is it just continually, your computer continually bombards itself, which does nothing other than passively slow down your internet.
That'll be 127.
What?
That'll be 127 or 1272.
Yeah.
Not 192.
But it's the home.
No, it's 192, isn't it?
No, 127 is your computer.
Yeah.
Well, 192 is your home network.
Not necessarily. A lot of them are on 10.0 at the moment.
I think what they should do
But
is
it
just
depends
give the
on the
IP
thing,
to the
but-
CIA.
There are
It's one of the kinds.
there are a couple of number strings which are operators' names, which are the default setups for a standard home computer. You can tweak it a little bit if you want to.
Yeah. Oh, the I think 192 is your home network.
Sometimes.
Yeah, regardless.
Anyway, so you can tell 4chan kids to DOS themselves.
Yes, you can
They
tell
have no idea what they're
4chan kids to do things with skulls from the catacombs. You shouldn't.
I don't know. There's nothing wrong with telling 4chaners to DDoS themselves. I consider it a moral.
However, on the positive and perhaps more uplifting note, as Fiona said, most systems are now pretty good about not connecting a nuclear power plant to the internet.
Not the Iranian.
And that's actually that's kind of where I'm going with that, because, however, there are ways around that, but you have to be incredibly good.
It's the social engineering.
And not just social engineering. You have to be incredibly good. You have to be lucky, and you have to have an enormous amount of resources if you want to get past what are now standard operating procedures for how you protect that kind of vital infrastructure. One example of this was a virus called Stuxnet, which was a beautiful virus. It had a number of things called 0 days. A 0 day is an unexploited flaw in a major operating system, which nobody knows about, so no one has had a chance to fix it, which means that from the moment, in theory, so from day 0 is when it's released.
No. It's a 0 day attack is an attack that basically when the software is launched, people who made the software know about it. They know about the bug. They know about the flaw. The CIA says, no, hold this off for 48 hours or whatever, so that we can do an attack on day 0. That's why it's a day 0 attack, because the attack happens on day 0 before whoever is responsible for making the software can patch the bug. Carry on.
There are these things. I've then heard programmers give me 2 different definitions of 0 days. Either way, the main point is that it's a major vulnerability that no one has had a chance to fix, which means the vast majority of people don't know it's there, so they don't even know to protect against it. These things sell for an enormous amount of money. Stuxnet had 8 of them in a single virus. As well as that, there are a number of companies that provide certification of websites and of different code and parts and things which say, this is okay, this is real, you're allowed to trust this request. And they use sorted authorizations and licenses to do that, which are again incredibly valuable, kept very, very secret. Sometimes a virus will try to fake one of these. Stuxnet had a real one, which in order to have got their hands on, they would have had to have broken through the security around internet security firms, which is understandably usually rather good. Which is what it looks like. Stuxnet looks like it was a government-funded attack. This was, yes, so that's hardly surprising, but
which government want to sabotage?
Any number of this was targeted at the Iranian nuclear reactors because, and they had to go to these kinds of lengths to get to these reactors because the Iranians did the sensible thing of going, right, so we're not going to hook our reactors to the internet. And in order to get around that, they had to create a very clever, very beautiful virus to do this. And the wonderful thing about this virus was it only activated in the reactors. So it's been found in this virus has been found in USBs all over the world. It's been found in elevators. It's not doing anything, it's just sort of chilling there, but it's been found there because that was the sort of lengths that they had to go to. They had to create a virus that would spread everywhere in order to get to this one thing that they were targeting.
I think
You have to be rather good to do
for
that.
Iran, they were loading it onto USBs, which they then scattered in the
Yeah.
car park
Yeah.
outside, hoping that employees
Well,
would
They definitely
that's
did
not
that
just
for
down
CIA.
there.
That's been done to the
That's
CIA.
been,
Yeah.
And
But
have they
Your
been done
definition of day
here,
zero is
although
better than mine.
although it was unsuccessful at getting
I admit to
into
it.
the thing here because the car park they dropped it in didn't have enough
Yeah.
fools.
But the main point though is for anything now really nasty like that, an ordinary person on the street is going to have a great deal of difficulty doing that.
Oh yeah, the
You
Iran
need-
one, yes.
So what you're saying is that
You
I
need-
shouldn't
you
have
need to
installed
go
Norton
to-
Internet Security?
There are a lot of other reasons why Norton is not ideal.
Yeah, don't go for Norton.
Where you went wrong is you
Security.
avoided McCarthy.
And everyone remember, your security programs will only protect you against threats that they know about. You can still get infected by things that they don't know about yet, or that they haven't yet found a way to combat.
Question.
Yes.
Why did they want to get into reactors and what did it do to
They-
shut them down?
Oh, it was lovely. Mark, it's yours.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, I know basically bugger all about Stuxnet, except that it's spread by USBs and it was almost certainly a government-funded program.
Which government though?
Yes, which government?
There could actually be quite a lot.
Anyway, so once Stuxnet actually made it into the Iranian nuclear facilities, after being uploaded by a USB, it replicated itself and it did two things. One, it shut down the cooling systems for the reactors. And two, it modified the control or the computer programs in the control room to make it look like the cooling systems for the reactors were still functioning. So
Thing is, you can't-
software, everything appeared as normal until the coolers melted down and completely ruined a great deal of stuff, setting the Iranian nuclear program back by a very long time. Which then actually brought the Iranian government to the table and made them talk about nuclear disarmament and actually did kind of
And allowing inspectors and things.
yeah, and allowing inspectors and scrapping the program, and actually some pretty good diplomatic advances. Whether or not that justifies entirely, but that's like pretty cool in an evil kind of way.
Yeah. You should note that there are now we have fairly firm evidence now that the Chinese and US governments are both constantly attempting to hack
Everyone.
or to have hacked on the behalf of companies that they support, firms from everywhere else and governments from everywhere else. This is why the US government doesn't want the Australian government to keep all of its cloud stuff in Australia and exclude US-based computers from.
Well, possibly fine.
They want the defense computers to be hosted in the US.
I made this point in my talk last semester when I was talking about the US has a wonderful tendency of going into because the reason why the US gets away with a lot of stuff is capable of doing a lot of stuff it does is because a lot of companies' data and servers, especially stuff like Google, is hosted in the United States. So they can rock up and go, hey, we're going to backdoor your server, please. We're the government, so we have the legal right to do so. So do it. And they do. And that's how they get into a lot of stuff, which is, currently under great public scrutiny thanks to several people.
That I cannot talk about. Yay!
But you can now, but cannot.
I can.
We are now allowed to mention them. We're allowed to acknowledge that some of them exist.
Well, no,
I can talk about now that I don't have a job or a clearance. I can talk about things that don't pertain to having had a job or a clearance.
Right. So, like, a lot of the ways that oh yeah, this is on camera, never mind.
Pat, please turn the camera off.
That's okay.
Yeah, don't
I
worry.
always recommend
Don't
just
worry.
delete
I think that this one should be deleted on the grounds that it contains a lot of copyrighted material. And I said this before.
In that case, before we do anything, can we watch the one from NCIS?
Yes!
We need,
Yes.
we need
I've
the
got to go
XSAC.
now, that's well. See you guys.
Oh, yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jumping these talks like
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have to go to it, actually. as well.
Remember, any ideas that you have for craziness is all good.